Great. Cool. And Emma and myself will be facilitating this session. So Emma, do you just want to say a few words about who you are?
Hi, yeah, thanks, Jan. Hi, yeah, I'm Emma. I work for the Canal and River Trust. I'm the Community Engagement Manager, and we're going to be having a new member of the staff, new member of the team joining soon, who'll be working just on this Holston section around developing more volunteering roles. So that's the plan for the future.
Thanks, Emma. And since we're only 3 other people, I think everyone can just say 2-3 words about who they are. That way it's a bit less anonymous. Lucy, do you want to go ahead? You're on top of my screen.
Sure. Yes, so I'm Lucy. I'm a Holston resident. I live very close to Wilson Junction Station. I don't represent any particular group, though I'm I'm a member of the Holston Residents Association. I also set up a WhatsApp group for my street during lockdown. So I guess you'd say class me as a kind of keen community member of the community resident.
That's great. Thanks, Lucy. Councillor Patel.
Oh, hi. Yeah, my name's Millie, and so I am councillor for Harleston Ward, Brent Council, and but I'm also born and sort of grew up in Harleston, so Harleston is home for me, and so I sort of like to represent the area. And then similarly to Lucy, I set up the Harleston Mutual Aid group. Yeah, and I got local Holstonite there as well, Anita. Yeah, so I'm sort of, I've joined this group because I'm particularly interested in sort of in the environment section, but on the council itself, I'm a cabinet member for children's safeguarding, early help and social care. Okay. So sort of young people and youth services is my area, but I'm kind of want to sort of understand more about the environmental side of things of this project. Thank you.
Great, thanks. There's somebody who's just, his name is P. I don't know who that is. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly?
Correct gender there, Jan, as well. Good guess, or did you know? My name's Philip. I'm a Harleston resident.
Oh, hello, Philip. I recognise your voice. How are you doing?
Good
Great.
Evening. Thank you.
Right, Anita, I think everybody knows you. Do you want to introduce yourself, or do you think we can get started?
Hello, I'm Anita Whitaker. Yes, I think in general, I think Lucy, I don't think we've met, although you do look like a familiar face.
Nice to meet you, Anita. I was just saying that I am a resident. I've lived in Holston for 4 years, and I don't represent any particular group, but I'm on the residents. I was going to say committee at Harleston Area Action, and I kind of set up a WhatsApp group for my street during lockdown. So I'm a interested resident.
So you're Yanni. Are you part of the group with Yanni and Leroy Simpson?
No. I'm not. Do you know what? I've never met Leroy, but I'll have to introduce myself to him on another in another call.
Wonderful.
Right. Cool. So we're going to talk a bit about environment, green space, public space, and we have a couple of questions that we just want to put to you, just kind of get a conversation going. And I feel like a lot of these questions actually, so I've got 5 questions. It feels like they're all actually interlinked. The question, I think the key question, or the big question that we're asking ourselves in this project, and I'm a bit privileged because I initiated this project, so I know very well the questions that we're asking ourselves. But so the key question is, how can we actually encourage people to to discover and use the canal, in particular in an area where green space is quite hard to come by. I know Brent and Holston are very proud of their park, but in the wider area, there's actually very little green space. And it feels often that like the canal is a sort of forgotten bit of public realm that nobody really knows about that well. So how can we bring people down to the canal? How can we make them discover the canal and really start sort of using it as this actually really great public realm asset at their doorstep? Does anyone have any ideas around that?
I'd start from the other end, actually, Jan. I'm
Mm.
surprised. I think it's underused. I'm down there quite frequently,
Mm.
and it's often quite difficult to get along the path in certain sections where it's narrow due to the volume of traffic.
Do you think, is that a recent thing, do you think, or is that something more general?
Perhaps it's been growing a little bit over the years. Cards on the table, I'm a cyclist myself, and I have cycled along the canal many times, but one of the worst problems are other cyclists, I have to say, and they can make it quite terrifying. I was actually cycled into by what's often known as a mammal, middle-aged man in lycra, who cycled into me the other day, and I was very polite to him, but I mean, he just wouldn't. He was so insistent on getting past me. I said, "It's so narrow here." I said, "Just give me a second. I'll move aside when I get 10 yards further along." And he just went into the back of me anyway. So since cyclists have started becoming more prevalent everywhere, which is good because I'm a cyclist, they have increased along the canal. So to answer your question, has canal usage gone up? Yes, I think cyclists have gone up because, and they're using it as a commuter route, and that I think part of the problem. Cycling a canal, going for a sort of a day out with the kids maybe should be lovely. Commuters using it as a racetrack in the morning and evening, awful.
Well, that's a bit the conflict, isn't it? It's about sort of using the canal as basically a transport corridor versus using it as a sort of a dwell space where you just come down in the afternoon and spend the day, let's say. And there's very few spaces along the canal in Harleston where you can actually do that. So the space we're looking at, which is next to the Lebanese restaurant, that's actually one of the few spaces where you have a bit more room along the canal, and where there's trees and there's a patch of grass, and you can actually really start imagining that people would use that massively. I haven't seen it myself, but I actually heard that during the pandemic, a lot of people came down to that section of the canal and started using it. And I think this, correct me if I'm wrong, Emma, but the sort of statistics, because there's a counter actually by the bridge at Acton Lane, and statistics, usage statistics went up by, was it 76%? I don't know the numbers by heart.
We could guess it for this kind of report, but yeah, it did, especially. Doing this
so it feels like a lot of people in this time of need, where they really needed a place or space outside, they did find their way down to the canal. So I guess what sort of the next step, or the sort of follow-on question would be is more sort of, obviously we don't want this pandemic to continue. So how do we actually make this space an interesting, exciting, nice space for people to continue to come down to? Over the months and the years to come.
So and what I can do is I can add in there that space is being utilised, but at the moment we have sort of residents who want to clean up that area. So there is a lot of litter picking and work, sort of that sort of activity going on. And they sort of they're concentrated all over Harleston in sort of wherever sort of people want to sort of do any of this kind of activity. But I know that bit by the restaurant, that section has been has had a lot of coverage. So I can believe that the use has gone up, but it is access. It's what sort of Phil said, like about access can be quite difficult, but I think the pandemic has opened that up to people, and probably people realizing that there's a lot of space, open outdoor sort of space on their doorstep that they necessarily wouldn't have discovered if it weren't for lockdown. So I think it's a combination. So I know that our outdoor spaces have had a lot of more footfall, and people are getting involved, and also really restricted in what you can do. But I know in the first lockdown you could do gardening, and it seems that sort of if you're in socially distanced and things like that, so I think people are picking that up as well. So that area is, and from the work that I do with the Young Brent Foundation, is that we've wanted to try and get young people out onto the canal, and but that part of Harleston hasn't been very accessible, and so we've only really had Welsh Harp where they can go. But
what's Welsh Harp again? Oh,
it's
the
a
reservoir.
bit further up. It's sort of kind of I don't know how to explain it. Kind of like behind Wembley, it sort of goes over to, I think, does it go over to Barnet Council? So yeah, so it's sort of that side of it. But it's just so that's what we. But there is some work that Young Brent Foundation are doing. They've got some projects, and that they're going to do some in the summer. So that will be really good. I think they've acquired a barge. And so they're going to do up a barge and sort of having people sort of like, you know, help with the building of it and sort of renovate it and that sort of thing.
That's really interesting. Yeah. Is that, and that would be at the sorry, what was it called? Would that be in our area, or would that be? Yeah,
that will be in the Harleston Canal side area. As far as I know, that's where it would be. But where it's docked or anything, I don't know.
That'd be really interesting to sort of to know a bit more about, and maybe we can be put in touch with them, because we I mean, I'm kind of jumping ahead now, but one of the conversations we've been having is with a boat carpenter who's looking for a workspace, and we're quite keen on allocating one of the 5 workspaces that we'll be delivering on site to that person, and really start sort of building on that dynamic in terms of boaters and so on that's already there. I mean, in summer, you often see people just fixing up their kitchen cabinets, boaters fixing up their kitchen cabinets on site, which is great, but at the same time, they leave behind a lot of waste and trash. So just really being able to accommodate those activities and giving it a space where it can actually happen in a sort of a more clean and supported way. That's actually what we're really keen on doing. And linking that back to the local businesses, to local community. Actually, what's more fun than sipping a coffee and watching somebody fix their boat while some kids are learning how to canoe? So that kind of combination of activities, that's what we're looking for. And we hope that that's sort of something that I mean, this came out of the community conversations, but we hope that that's also really something the community would appreciate, and that would help sort of anchor this space in the sort of mental green space, open space map of wider Harleston areas. And Emma, it's probably also interesting for you to kind of have a conversation with that organization. Emma is going to lead on that sort of more volunteering focused aspect. So I think a conversation with other groups that are doing sort of volunteering work already on the canal would be really, really interesting.
Can I ask a question? I know, you've got questions, but how, so as I mentioned, there was a lot of interest over the lockdown about people wanting to use the open spaces around them and want to get into gardening, maybe some food growing, but and we do have some groups that are doing that. I mean, where Phil is at the Harleston Town Gardens, I mean, that's very well established. But there's also the Kensal Green COVID Mutual Support Group, and they've now acquired a few plots where they're also growing food. But how can we sort of, I think Harleston tends to lack that, I don't know, just the cohesiveness of getting groups together. It's not like we don't have people that want to be involved, but it's more about starting that group up and sort of getting it going. So, you know, for example, like I'm trying to do something with the Bramshill open space, which is near the railway, you know, tracks where Wilson Junction is. And so that, I mean, I think that's something that maybe yourself and Emma could look into, and how can we sort of get the community together?
Yeah. Do you think that that's sort of one of the key things that's missing to kind of, or do you think that's going to be sort of one of the risks that we're going to be looking at in this project, that sort of it's difficult to get community really go?
Can I give a little personal perspective on the idea of food growing down there? Which seems on the surface a great idea, but as Millie just alluded to, I'm part of the Harleston Town Garden Community Project, which Anita over in the other corner there set up. she's too busy to, you know, come down and see us every day now. So I'm there. Yeah, there she hold his head. So we are a community growing project, and I don't think community growing would work in your location because, unfortunately, a little bit like Bramshill open space, to be a successful food growing thing, you really need to be secure. It seems very simple. Oh, we'll just set up some sort of raised beds and we'll grow some stuff there. If you haven't got a secure area, it won't work. Like Bramshill doesn't work. So I would suggest using the space for something else. Okay,
that's good, because actually a lot of people did mention that they would appreciate sort of community gardening and so on in that location, but the management and maintenance
like a really
of that
great idea.
Quite difficult.
It's very big in the zeitgeist at the moment. You know, let's grow things. I agree. If you don't have a secure space, it won't work. That's how Harleston Town Garden started off. It was open to the public, and gradually it had more and more measures had to be brought in. A hedge was put in to try and keep people separate. That didn't work. A low fence put in. That didn't work. Eventually, a high fence with a gate had to be put in, and then a gate on the outside of that.
Okay. And yeah, shall we just make a start? So we've put some questions in the chat. So if we just spend probably about 5 minutes on each question, just make sure you all get a say. So the first question was, how can we encourage people to use and enjoy the canal more? So did anyone have anything to say on that initially?
Can I throw first? I think my take on that first question will be, first of all, the canal we are talking of, will it be well maintained, clean, attractive? It is, and other things. And why I raise it as in that first point, I mean, I've seen developers in some areas along the canal feeder, brilliant, nice, very fanciful flats. However, if you look at the canal, which piques interest of some of the people who are either buying or renting those plots, the canal will be an eyesore, stagnant, smelly. Sometimes animals find a prey to fall into the canal. So if I go back to the question, how can we encourage people to use and enjoy the canal more? So first of all, the developers, the OPDC, or people who are going to be maintaining that beautiful edifice you're going to give us, if it's not well maintained, if it's not well looked after, again, you will not get people to use it. I mean, I'm saying it on a practical terms. As a councillor, I've been fighting with some areas along the canal feeder to get it attractive so that the young people bought those flats in order to enjoy the scenery of those water flow or canal, whichever you call it. I keep it because I know many other people will want to add something. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Does anyone else have anything to add? Should I just go round? John, did you?
Well, just on that point, the canals are very well maintained. They are now very much cleaner than they were. When I first went on the canals, there was a point in Birmingham, if you made the water churn, you got phosphorus oxide smoke coming out the top of it. And the water was blue with the cyanide. And it's now been around that area, because my job used to take me to Birmingham occasionally, and I used to skive off in the afternoon. And it's beautiful, like it was. Some people might find it's a bit, because it's not lit that well, but I mean, that doesn't worry me at all. But I think it's good. It's an easy environment. It's quite a good path on it. But you get the local authority has some responsibility to pick up litter. Volunteers do, and the Canals and River Trust have it. And Canals and River Trust have a lot more power and a lot more go than the British Waterways Board could do when they were sort of umpteen things down some undersecretaries, basically in charge of hill farming in the ministry. That is really where they were, and now you've got a proper charity. I think it can only go forward.
Yeah. Do you think there's anything else, like what else could be done to encourage more people to enjoy the canal and to use the space, John?
Not so much in our present area, but if you go eastward, there's a long stretch between Ladbroke Grove and the collective, in which there's no other access apart from you get on at one end and you walk to the other. And it would be nice in another part of this big project to get that in. I think it gets quite rural as you get out of towards Harleston, well, beyond Harleston, Elperton. It's very soon into open country. By the time you get to Uxbridge, you really are in the country.
Thanks.
Yes, I would like. May I join in? I mean, I've lived on this part of the canal for and used it for about 35 years and been involved in canal community sort of over that time. And over that time, there has been a massive change in the level of use of the canal and how it's perceived and its cleanliness. Thinking back 20 years, it was a very much more dangerous place because there weren't many people around and using it, and because it wasn't very well lit, and it just wasn't very well valued. And so I've seen a drastic change in my time involved in this bit of canal. I mean, literally, there were areas of it that were no go at night if you wanted to not have a lot of trouble. There would be it would be so badly lit and all that sort of stuff, and I think what has transformed it is mostly the number of boats that are now moored up on the canal. So at night, as John pointed out, there are very few exit points, and so if you start walking west from Ladbroke Grove until you get to Scrubs Lane, there's no escape point. So if somebody is hiding in the bushes and jumps out at you, there's really nowhere to go at all. But seeing as there are now quite a lot of canal boats moored along that section, all you would have to do is call out, and there would be somebody looking out of their boat and calling the police or whatever on their mobile phone. So it's drastically different. Certainly at the moment with pandemic, in many ways it's too crowded. It's great to see so many people come out and use it as a form of exercise and all that sort of stuff. But there are many people, there are far too many people on a very narrow bit of canal, really, huffing and puffing without masks on and all that sort of stuff. So, at this stage, I would suggest that we don't really need more people coming onto the canal. Hopefully we will be moving beyond that soon, and but still health and safety I think is still a very crucial issue. You can't put railings up along the whole canal and cotton wool it all. It is by nature a sort of dangerous structure that people have to be encouraged and educated about carefully.
Yeah, great, thank you. We'll move on to the second question. So that's how can we enhance outdoor space around Harleston Canal side? So that's the site that Jan was showing in his presentation earlier. I don't know, Emily, did you have anything else to say about the specific site? You might be better at explaining exactly where it is, or you've been working on the project?
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't been so closely. I've been actually on the engagement side of the project, to be honest. So I don't want to say something and then it'd be wrong. But so sorry about
so do you guys know the site in question, or do you want me to try and pull out I'll see if I can get you a map.
Yes, it's opposite the Grand Junction pub, isn't it?
Yeah, so I can explain it, but not personally. Sorry. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, next to the Lebanese restaurant, that area in there. Yeah, I've been there. I just
yeah, Mike's in a much better to explain it than me.
Yeah.
Yes, it's got a great lot of potential, that site, I think, and it's well chosen, you know, to put some work into. I mean, it's a bit of Canal that so far hasn't enjoyed much development and still sort of remains in the more dangerous category. People, if you leave your boat moored up there for very long without it being attended, it will be broken in two, and so people have lost everything they own, quite often mooring up in that sort of area. So it's great that it's going to be given some love.
Yeah. How do you think we could enhance the outdoor space, particularly?
There's a couple of things come to mind immediately. Is that the pub is very successful, and it is now very much more on the canal than it was, say, 15 years ago. And then you've got that wonderful set of brick levels coming down, and you look at what that really is a theatre, because you've got the big central gangway, and with steps aren't too difficult to go down. And then you've got these big steps; they're there to be sat on, and you can have some performance on a boat or a barge on the side, or puppet theatre, or there are things you can do with that. I'm also in the arts, but not speaking on their behalf tonight. But that's, you know, that's how that place looks to me. I mean, it's actually very interesting. It's got very interesting history around there. I've been looking up some old maps.
Yeah.
And you can go back. It was actually agricultural land. Then it became the Royal Agricultural Showground, and then that went bankrupt, or they sold it to. So it didn't happen that. And then it became industry, and then bits of it become housing, and the canal has sort of was very industrial, and then it's dropped off, but now industrial is coming back. So it's a very lively area, and there's a lot going on. And in terms of showing people things, I'm beginning to look at the feeder canal, which I found that Brent has a wonderful account of in their ecology section, which probably no other canal has found, except that I'm so bad at using Google that things fall upon me because I put the wrong thing in the into the search line. But there's a whole story there.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I'm really sorry. I'm going to have to move you on.
Oh, okay, yes, I can go forever on this. I know.
Councillor Ernest.
2 minutes.
Did you have any suggestions of how we could enhance the outdoor space around the canal?
I mean, yeah, I think we have 2 minutes, so we're gonna fast forward it a bit quick. I think it might be something that attracts people to most of the community centers. Sometimes will be canteen, outdoor kind of, because if you have like a eating area that you can use outdoor in the evening, and there's people can do live music, you know. I mean, I'm not sure, but this is the kind of thing. What we've done in Wembley is to add some of these things that will attract like a 24-hour survey, 24-hour lifestyle. So if we have like a restaurant, which will attract a lot of people there, then we also think of restaurant will probably start looking at live kind of music on weekends or
attract there, like in the evening as well.
Yeah.
Time just to answer. What was your experience of Harleston during the pandemic? Does anyone want to answer that?
I mean, the thing that we know that in Harleston, especially Church Road, is part of Harleston, they're highly affected with the pandemic. So we had a lot of lives lost in that church end part of Harleston. And you know, there are issues about the type of job people do, the type of houses they live. which I believe this development will enhance people by working in a better environment, get a good job. If those things will be something that we are looking to come out from the.
Well, can I just say, I eavesdropped on every session, I believe, and there was the most amazing conversations being had, exactly why it was so important to have this webinar. Does everybody, if you can nod, put your thumbs up if you felt that, you know, there were some good conversations, great. It's really important that we were able to have that. So if we can start feeding back, because I'm aware that time's running down, and I want to be able to have the questions and answers before we finish. So if we can start with group A1, can you feed back as to some of the thoughts, the key points that were discussed in your group?
Yeah, sure. I think that's over to me. Thanks, Anita. Yeah, there's an overall feeling that the canal is currently pretty well used. You know, there's been a lot of usage during the pandemic. There's a growing number of cyclists as well, and of course that with that comes the growing conflict, because there are so many different users wanting to use the space for different things. We did then talk about how can we make the space interesting, and you know, we know there's a lot of activity already with litter pickers and community engagement like that, but things like access to access is make sorry I can't remember what I said. There's lots of different users who've got different requirements. I think that's something that's key in our meeting, and it ended with an interesting discussion about food growing and how, even though it'd be a fantastic thing to do, if it's something we want to do and if it's something we think groups can do, security is a major part of that. How can the food be grown in an area that will be well looked after?
Wonderful. Wow. And yes, I was at the tail end of that discussion and doing lots of nodding and thumbs up to what Philip was feeding back on. So yes, interesting. Group 2A, Youth and Legacy.
Hi, thanks, Anita. So some of the key points we spoke about in our breakout room was about how to access and communicate things to young people and where the best routes might be, whether it's sort of social media. We'll see if anyone else comes in, but maybe we could just start off, seeing as we're a very small group, it'd be nice to know who we have in the room. Yeah, Anna, do you want to introduce yourself to begin with?
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Anna Shamoon and I'm the Senior Engagement Officer for OPDC. So I work around all of our community engagement projects, specifically community residents, community groups and schools and local youth projects as well. So hi Danny. Hi, I was just introducing myself. I'm Anna. I'm the Senior Engagement Officer at OPDC. So I was just saying I work across all of our projects with in terms of community engagement.
Good evening.
Hi. I can quickly introduce myself as well, and then we'll go around the room. So my name's Sarah. I work for an organisation called ECHO. We are a local community network that encourages skill sharing amongst local people. And yeah, so I'm really interested in anything that helps people kind of develop skills and grow their networks. Yeah, looking forward to hearing what thoughts people have. Susan, would you like to introduce yourself and just tell us a bit about you?
Well, actually, I know Danny and Rick's already.
Oh, okay.
I'm Susan Grace. I also work at Newman Catholic College. I'm a local resident here in Harleston, and I've lived in the area and worked in the area for 19 years. And I'm also the community link for the school, and I do all the social media for the school, and I'm also the chair of the Brent Borough Sanctuary. So I think that's important.
Amazing, cool. Thank you, Susan. Great to have you with us. Although you guys know each other, it'd be great for me to know who you are. So Rick, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Gardner, worked for company Revo Seekers, lived in the borough for over 40 years, served projects for all of the schools in Brent, ran one of the biggest projects for Brent Council, was on the Harleston Neighbourhood Forum, was also supporting the other forum, I forgot their names now, the Old Oak Forum, not the Old Oak, the by the church. I've forgotten their names now. Susan, can you remember their names?
Old Neighbourhood Forum or Grand Union Alliance?
Grand Union Forum, that's their names, yeah. And I've also supported OPDC from its conception.
Brilliant.
So I've done a number of projects already with some young people, with their ideas of what they think they would like to see in a smart city and what they would like to see throughout OPDC. So I'm just excited to make reconnections with OPDC, to be honest.
Great. Well, it's very useful for me to be in a room with you three.
And Danny, we already met you with your brilliant talk, but if you want to say hi, please do.
Do the talk again. Yeah, I work with Susan at Newman in Harleston. I really don't have much to say, you know. I think it's fantastic that these sort of things happen. I've been teaching in London for a long time, and you know, like I say, been in Harleston now for 11 years. I'm at home now. I live in Wood Green in Haringey. But yeah, I mean, let's just get on with it and see what we can do.
Yeah, it was a great presentation.
Yeah, it really was. Thank you. So we've probably got about 15 minutes or so now, just to get your guys' thoughts really on the youth and legacy question around what this project can do for local young people and to support skill building and a long-term legacy for the local area. So I mean, you clearly have loads of ideas already, so I'm not going to say too much, but just would love to kind of hear your thoughts. And yeah, there are a few questions that Anita shared that would be maybe useful to kind of frame the discussion, and then yeah, Anna and I will just try and capture as much of what's sort of said so that we can feed back to We Made That and to the project team. So the first question that came up was around how do we celebrate what makes the area so unique? I mean, maybe picking up on some of the stuff that you were talking about would be interesting, Danny. And then just to quickly let you know what the other questions are going to be, it's also how can we enable healthier lifestyles and more outdoor activity, I guess particularly maybe from the young people's perspective, and how can new uses support building skills and employability for young people, and how just in general can the hub support young people. So maybe if we start with that question of how can we celebrate what makes the area so unique, that might be an interesting starting point.
Just to get the ball rolling, there's no doubt about it in my mind. What makes Brent and Harleston in particular unique is diversity and the immigration that is at the root of that. And I think these days particularly, we need to stand up tall and say, this is a really good thing. In fact, this gives us an advantage to any other place in this country because we're bringing together the experiences and the insights and the cultural knowledge and the cognitive knowledge of people from all over the world. So it gives us that superior, I think, perspective on some of the complex problems that our society has, because it's that melting pot is not the right word, but it's that kind of that fizz and that buzz and the energy that is created because of the foundation of immigration and the diversity that's come about it. So we need to say this is positive, and this can even get better if we harness it and if we get it right.
I'll second that. You need to be able to example that the borough is the gateway to the world, kind of, for England. It has the world sitting in the one borough, so it's the gateway to everything that is happening globally. Also with the legacy, I'll say about also remembering the history of the area, the musical history, the arts history. We've got everything from George Michael to the largest reggae distributor in Europe was in Harleston. Mean Fiddler started in Harleston. Ozzy Osbourne, certain artists started from Harleston. Like to retain that history that's been lost for a second, but will then revamp the energy of the area, inspiring young people to want to get back into arts and displaying their arts.
Hey Ricky.
How you doing, Anita?
I'm good. I'm good.
In a while.
I know. I'm here. I'm here.
Hey Anita. Susan, did you have anything you wanted to add on to that point about
all I wanted to say is, our young people need opportunities and opportunities to thrive, and I think particularly not all of them are academic, but they need opportunities to, you know, take on apprenticeships, get involved, you know, in opportunities, work experience, placements, etc. And then that opens up a whole different world to them from what they may, you know, be exposed to at home. Because remember, many of their parents may not necessarily have gone on to further education or had, you know, opportunities that are open to our young people. And I think it's about preparing young people for the world that they're going to be growing up in, making them responsible citizens and giving them those opportunities to thrive and to learn new skills and to integrate and mix up with people who they may not necessarily always, you know, come across in their day-to-day experiences.
Yeah, we've got an opportunity with what's happening now, because the residents, the users, the implementers of OPDC, they're still at school. Yeah, when you look at the timeline, everyone who's going to really benefit from OPDC is still at school. And this is a great chance to get them exposed. So a lot of people work with work experience. We work with work exposure. So we expose young people to different industries so that they can make informed choices of how to work. Now, we ran this for 10 years with Brent Council through the Brent Summer University scheme. And those young people, one of the young people is in OPDC right now on this forum right now, who came from one of our youth programs. And we can expose young people to so many different things that's going to be happening and coming up throughout the years by having young people to be able to come and witness it, see it, volunteer. And this will give them a great insight to them what experience they want to take to move forward in education or into employment.
Definitely. Sorry, were you saying something?
That was a really, your point about the people that are going to actually feel the majority of the benefit from the work that OPDC are doing is still at school now. I think it's a really, really key.
I've been trying to get that message across to OPDC for the last 5 years, yeah? There's no point talking to the adults.
Yeah.
The kids are the ones who are really going to benefit from it. So it's about getting them fully engaged.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think what's really important, what we need to be finding out from the young people is what is going to make you stay in this area? What is going to make you want to make your home in this area, start your family in this area, rather than move out to other parts of London, move out to other parts of the UK? What is it that we can do that's going to make you want to be here?
And they need something, because right now what they've been pumped on is gangs, knife crime, murder. It's the main focus of the area right now. They need something else to bring them alive and make them have some hope for the area. So it's lovely that this is happening for them at such a crisis time for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of the Canal Side Hub project in particular, do you guys have thoughts, things coming to mind about what kinds of ways young people might be able to engage in it that helps to build skills and exposure and networks and all that stuff that you're talking about?
I think activities on the canal, particularly like we had some of our students go and do some kayaking at Welsh Harp. But if there's that kind of opportunity on the canal, then that's closer to home, and you know would be an amazing thing for them to do. Even linking up our science, perhaps geography departments with activities that they could do to engage with the canal and see the there's obviously a lot of environmental issues along the canal as well. So all of those things link into the school curriculum. So I think that's important. Like looking at links into the curriculum that we can, as a school, engage with. And I mean, the canal's only a short walk away. It's not that far for us to access.
Mm. We had Neil, who runs our canoeing sessions as part of the Sharks Canoe Club. He was telling us that he has kids go to his canoe sessions that have never been in a body of water that wasn't a swimming pool. They've never been in the sea. They've never been in a canal. They've never been on the river. They've always, their experience with kind of water is a swimming pool, which I thought was really interesting, actually.
Just go back to that point that Rick's made earlier on, however. I think it's absolutely critical that we do speak to the young people and find out what their voice is saying. And it's not difficult. I mean, Susan there runs London Citizens at our school, where, Harleston boys and girls are very, very eloquent in putting forward what they think would be the solutions to some of the problems in our society. She also runs the school council. Again, I mean, it's a bit more colloquial, Obviously, it's more sort of school issues, but particularly now they're so familiar with these sort of forms of communication, it wouldn't be difficult at all for us at Newman, and I'm sure it's the same at other schools in Harleston, to set up a couple of focus groups where you can talk to these kids who have come from all over the world and found the home in Harleston, and I'm sure they'd give you a perspective that is probably more interesting than mine, but also more varied and maybe relevant than we can come up with. We can guide them, obviously. That's our role, isn't it, as adults? But certainly their voice has to be absolutely central to this.
We're about to put on a session for a number of schools of young people to create a forum to discuss a few issues. One of the issues was youth violence. We tested a little bit of the conversation the other day, me and Susan, with some of the young people from London Citizens, because I spoke on the mayor's choices of what he wants to do with the funding for youth violence. So I wanted to get young people's ideas of what they're, so this would be another perfect example for me to put this project together to get these young people to discuss what they want there, because a lot of them don't even know it's happening. When I speak to residents in the community, they don't know what's going on. I've been telling them for the last 5 years, you've got a huge opportunity coming around the corner. And if you don't get Harleston young people and Harleston community involved, Harleston will suffer. Because you've got OPDC on one side and you've got the London Designer Outlet on the other side. And Harleston's bang in the middle will suffer because all the attention will go both ways. So unless Harleston residents and community understand what's there, they won't be able to address and fit in properly with everything that's changing.
I mean, I run the student council on Tuesdays at 4:30 online because at the moment our bubbles can't mix. That might not mean anything to you, but our year groups can't mix because of the COVID restrictions. And on Wednesdays at 4:30, we run London Citizens. Now, our London Citizens group successfully campaigned against Brent Council to get lights in Roundwood Park. So they would be very excited to talk to you about the canal. So, you know, please contact me. Anita has my email, and come and talk to us online. They'd love to hear from you. Student Council and London Citizens will make it happen.
That's great. Thank you, Susan. I'll be in touch about that. I think that said we had 2 minutes.
No,
so...
we've got 2 minutes. I mean, it seems like the major takeaway from this is that a great next step for this project, if it's not already happening, because it may be I'm not actually directly involved in it, is to actually talk to some local young people and maybe make use of some of the forums and the networks that you guys have offered up, which would be amazing.
It's not happening. It's not happening. It happened for a bit and then OPDC went quiet for a long time, and you've re-emerged again. So I would love to support, as I did in the past, and continue this conversation with young people.
It would be really helpful. I know we've got no time left at all, but we struggle getting other schools to talk to us. I think it needs to be kind of curriculum relevant. We do struggle kind of getting people on board with us. So any advice that you can give me would be really welcome.
Well, be free to contact me anytime.
That would be really helpful.
And Anita's got my details as well.
That's really helpful.
Yeah, and I can give you some suggestions as to what you can do as well. But I think we're going to be kicked out of this room in a moment. But please contact me and let me know.
I will do. Thanks, everyone. That was
Thank
really
you.
Thank you so much for your input, everyone. See you back in the main session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back.
Cool. Harry, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, so my name's Harry Owen Jones. I am one of the co-founders of 3 Space. We are the organisation who will be operating the facilities a little bit further down the line. So we're working with We Made That and a sort of wider consultant team, including BRD and obviously with OPDC, Canal and River Trust, Brent and others to sort of formulate what those facilities will look like and what purpose they'll serve before we get on to actually operating them. So yeah, that's me.
Great. I'll go next. I'm Kavita Taylor from OPDC. I think I've met some of you before. So I'm leading this project with Jan, and as sort of Anita described, we're sort of close to getting to the phase of sort of deciding what uses will be in the project. So yeah, very much interested to hear people's thoughts, particularly on this theme about young people. I'll just go in order of the chat. Lisa is next on my list.
Hello, I'm Lisa Jones. I'm working with Produce UK and Hannah Bennyhood, and we are hi Kavita. we're basically putting together some artworks and wayfinding within the site. So I'm just we're working with young people in that process. So I'm just kind of getting thoughts on people's different perspectives on what's been going on already. There's so much work and thought that's gone into the area, and I'm just wanting to learn really and gauge who those people are and what's been happening. So I don't know that I'll say very much, but I'm very pleased to be here.
Thanks, Lisa. Neil, you're next on my list.
Hi, I'm Neil Underwood. I'm responsible, I guess is the right word, for the Sharks. So it's the canoe club that operates currently out of the container, which was previously mentioned in the car park. That's about it, really.
Anna Doyle.
Hi, I'm the Town Centre Manager for Harleston and Wilson Green for Brent Council.
And I've got Councillor Jumbo Chan. Oh, you're on mute.
Apologies. Hi everyone, my name's Councillor Jumbo Chan. I represent Kensal Green Ward. So this is quite a bit away from where we are, but there'll be quite a lot of Kensal Green residents interested in this. So I'm just attending to hear what everyone has to say tonight.
Great, thanks for coming. And Councillor Matt Kelcher.
Yeah, I'm actually alongside Jumbo. We both represent Kensal Green, so it probably should have come third and not come to the same one, but never mind, here now. And yeah, so it's just obviously really interesting because it's a good community space that people from all around the area, from a few different boroughs and wards and stuff, can all go to. And I know Anita in that as well. So yeah, we're just coming to find out a bit more about the project on the back of that.
Thank you. Fola?
Hi, I'm Fola from Abundance Arts, and we run an art club just around the corner in Stonebridge, and we use the canal to walk and find a bit of peace, and it looks like a really exciting program that's happening there. And we work with the local families. There's 200 families that we work with actually. About 60 kids come to our activities and take part, volunteering, doing art workshops and so on. And we've actually been working with OPDC recently. They funded our summer program. So we're doing some outdoor activities last summer. And then we're doing some other things with Kavita with the outdoor realm. So we're getting kids and families, local kids and families involved creatively with the projects in the local area. So we're really excited about it, basically.
Thank you.
So that's me. That's all our Abundance Arts. Thank you.
Thanks, Fola. There was a Maria here, but she seems to have left. So I think it's just us. I'll post our questions in the chat for us to discuss, but be really interested to hear thoughts on I mean what people, the bullet points here. I mean, we can start wherever really, but if anyone sort of has any immediate thoughts or anything else surrounding the theme on sort of youth and legacy.
So I was just going to, I think just to highlight something about need to sort of signpost and make, because there's no point in having great facilities there if sort of young people don't know about them. And I think it's really, really clear to that, you know, you need to ask young people themselves where they find out their information, because you know, we've had some good facilities in Brent that are just around the corner, and then when you actually meet the kids there, they don't even sort of know they're there. And I think it's because Brent thinks like, well, you know, Facebook's a young people's thing, we'll put it on there and they'll find it, and you find out actually anyone under 25 has never even been on Facebook and stuff like that. So I think, you know, I've been sort of quite surprised sometimes actually, you know, public sector invests in and has really good sort of services out there for young people, but they just don't even know about them, even when they're only a few streets away. So I think if this has got a wider scope, I just think making sure everyone's aware about it would be my real important thing I would suggest.
Yeah, and do you have any sort of insights where those sorts of young people sort of do receive their information? Is it TikTok?
I remember I asked this about 2 years ago and got some answers when I was speaking to a group of kids at Downey School, actually, but I think by 2 years it's probably already out of date, isn't it? So I think the whole point is don't ask any of us on this call, make sure you go somewhere and ask like 15-year-olds. That would be my answer.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, I think that Danny's school, the school council there, they've got a really well-run student body, so that's somewhere some people you can speak to. I mean, like Matt will kind of confirm this as well, but there was like literally there was a Roundwood Youth Centre nearby, and that was kind of underused as well. I mean, there were cuts, etc. as well, but this is kind of the point I want to move on to, which is, I think it's your third bullet point. Is it your third one? No, your fourth one, sorry, your fourth one. How can it support young people? And whereas like Dawn did emphasize the positives of Brent, you know, we are very diverse, and I'm incredibly lucky to live here in the wards. But at the same time, we must not forget that actually we have quite high rates of poverty as well here. And you know, like looking at the coronavirus pandemic, like we were like pretty much, you know, at the center of, you know, like, you know, some of the highest death rates, you know, and that's, we know like health is tied to socioeconomic kind of backgrounds, etc. So what I would like to kind of emphasize, or at least bring into this conversation, and at least like maybe hear from others as well, is how can we make sure that this kind of regeneration for area, which seems exciting, can actually be accessible to young people, something Danny did mention a few times, so that it's not just like, you know, swanky kind of shops and cafes for maybe older people, maybe people with money, etc. And then, you know, like after, I don't know, 6-7 o'clock, it kind of everything shuts down, and then, you know, young people aren't stupid, you know, they want to go somewhere. You know, I'm a teacher, I see them every day, you know, I teach some of the, you know, the people I teach, there's like 70% free school meal. The people aren't, you know, like very seen from very deprived background, they're not stupid, but they want somewhere where they can go to somewhere. So that's just something I want to bring to this conversation. So that, you know, it can be as flashy and swanky as it can be, but if it's not used by local people, then it doesn't mean much.
Would you say there's a bit of an underground kind of nighttime economy in a creative sense, where young people might go and you know, make radio shows or make music or that kind of stuff? But for me, I'm still learning about the area, but a lot of it seems to be kind of under a roof. You know, there's lots of space, it's just got to know where to go to find it and where those activity spaces are from a creative perspective. So it's an industrial space, and I'm learning about the businesses that are there. But I imagine as a young person, if your uncle knows someone who's got a back room who you could go and work and record in or something, you might go there and set up something. From my experience living rurally, that's how it worked. And I don't know whether there are avenues there with the young people. Obviously with the Abundance Arts, you work with lots of young people. There might be some smaller independent breakout groups and creative spaces where people have found solutions to things to do when there's not much going on. I don't know if anyone's got any in on that, but I'd love to know.
I think our approach, Lisa, is very much going to be around sort of partnership working and looking to reach out to the organisations who've got a long-held footprint in Brent and Harleston, and to leverage those relationships with the younger population, rather than just going in and sort of saying, look, we've got this new space, come and use the facilities. I think it will be working with the sort of long-standing groups. So I think that's very much the approach that Three Spaces has always taken, and what we'd look to do here. The spatial testing is sort of very much underway at the moment, and that I think will very much determine the types of facilities that we have, and I guess the user group as well, and what exactly they will be and what they'll look like. So yeah, it is also underway at the moment, but we will continue to just, I guess, look to work with not just the wider group who are shaping the project to this point, but also others as they come forward.
I saw Neil put his hands up first, so whether you want to speak first or you put your hands down, I'm not sure.
I just wanted to also, just before you go, Neil, just introduce Maria, because I think she left and has joined again. Maria, are you there? Maybe not. Oh, never mind. She can. Oh,
hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you want?
Yes.
Do you want to introduce yourself? We just have started chatting, so you haven't missed too much.
No, I just have technical issue before.
Oh,
this was the problem. I work with the younger people, and I try to help the disadvantaged younger people through art, through filmmaking and storytelling and improv theatre. And I need to say is, if they get the space was with the facility, yes, it is a really good plan, but need to really learn to them how to really respect the place and to make them to be kind of take the place to do activity, move them to do more that someone else do for them. Because I found is the fact that they have a lot of fear, the young people, is they don't put themselves at the first, and because there is all many, I know is for different reasons. We not just give the place, but need to make them in charge and guide to really is can they put themselves at the first and help other people of the same age. For this, I need to say, it need to be a place where can really young people be the first, and someone just guide them instead to make all activity for them, but they can make for themselves.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. Neil, did you want to come in now as well? And I've just seen we've got to get back in 2 minutes.
Very aware of that fact.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to speak really fast. There's 3 things actually. One was the comment that you made earlier about what social media, Facebook. Somebody said to me quite a while back about social media. By the time you've heard of it, all the young people have moved away from it. So don't even bother trying to pretend you're going to conquer that market, because you never will. But the biggest and easiest places to contact young people are schools, because that's where they should be. And most of them are there. And we found in the projects we work on, actually, by working with schools, that's how we make contact with people very successfully. And in terms of just coming back to the final sort of thing, which was said about having, it's a very valid point, strange place, but local people don't feel that it's theirs. You've got to actually give young people the ownership of it. So they've got to feel that they've got a real say in it, not just that their customers, clients, call it what you will, but they can come down and actually have real input. There's no sort of middle-aged, middle-class people saying what's going on. They've actually got to be involved. And I'm guessing, you know, I'm writing myself out from day one on what I've just said, but you know, that's the reality. They've got to feel ownership of it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
It's the movement. I walk and cycle and I observe nature along the canal. I do think wheelchair access is really important, but so is safety. We've got the sad example of what happened in Berkshire to the 3-year-old child falling in, and that was near a play area. There was very little water safety. We don't know the details yet. I'm also think it's wonderful that we've got water sports there already, and I think that should be encouraged. I'm very against tower blocks and fencing off. We've further down the Old Oak, Jan mentioned the Old Oak area, so we've lost a birchwood there. We used to be able to access that. But I think we need to focus today on the stretch which was outlined to us earlier.
Yeah, have you got particular kind of local knowledge? Is that something that are there really particular and specific things that you'd like to see addressed?
Well, I mean, given that this group is about inclusion, and we've just heard St Mungo's talking, I mean, my initial thought was, how would boaters feel about sharing showers with rough sleepers? But in fact, many boaters do have their own showers anyway.
I guess that's one of the challenges, isn't it? Is how do we make sure that we can design facilities where people can come together and that we don't exclude people from those spaces? I think there's a lot of kind of consideration to be given to the range of different people we want to attract to this part of the canal. And obviously there's residents nearby, but there's also kind of quite a large business community that use these spaces already for, well, pre-COVID at least, to have lunch as a kind of key amenity space. There's not many pockets of green space in Park Royal, for example.
Yes, and I mean, if you go along there at certain times, you're very aware of the factory shifts.
Yeah.
So people accessing the industrial estate. So you've got a lot of traffic, human traffic coming through, people walking, people cycling, people pushing buggies. You know, just the infrastructure of the paths and things are quite an issue if we've got to share it. There was the campaign about 10 years, no, maybe 20 years back about 2 tings if you're on a bike.
Mm. And this part of the, obviously it's a kind of was, again, pre-COVID times, but will be again a kind of key commuter route as people cycle down the canal. Are there challenges there, do you think, in terms of inviting new people to use those spaces based on those that currently use it, cyclists or other users of those spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are safety issues always near the canal. I mean, we're lucky, a lot of it is very shallow, but there's broken glass and, you know, old bikes and shopping trolleys in there as well. I mean, it looks like some of the patches oh no, again, that's the Old Oak that's got the blackberries. There's some lovely flowering cherry. Yeah, I mean, I think signposting will be hugely important. The awareness of space and you know, how flows work with people working. I mean, occasionally you come across a lad on a motorbike down there, because where you can access it with a bike or a buggy or a wheelchair, you can also get down there with a motorbike.
And do you think that prevents it feeling inclusive and accessible for others?
Not necessarily, no. I mean, I think one of the joys of the canal is that it is a very sort of mixed area. I mean, I know some people think of it as only no goods go there, but in fact, a lot of people do go there and enjoy there and have a great time there, just being or chatting or volunteering.
And what is, in terms of some of the presentations you saw earlier, are there particular new uses or opportunities that come to mind for how to invite more people to spend time around the canal? Any of those resonate with you?
Yes, I mean, this idea of a hub is something that one often meets in meetings to do with Harleston. So it's, I think that they've got to be dynamic enough activities. Business have got to pay their way, you know, supporting and creating opportunities, maybe sharing space, however it's going to be organised. But people need to be able to feel like it's their own. But the ground rules, I guess, need to be clear enough. I mean, you will have to staff it in order to, you know, to provide some continuity, to facilitate bookings and that sort of thing.
I think it was picked up in Nisha's presentation, but yeah, that kind of the operational plan, like how does it actually add up? How do we make it sustainable to make sure that there's a kind of, yeah, that it's resilient to change and it can adapt to what people need to use it for. Yeah, that does, I think it's more than just a building. It needs people there. It needs, so I guess from your links in the local area, are there particular ways you think that we should be reaching out to the wider community? Well,
I mean, Danny Coyle's points were extremely important, that the youth, we are a very young borough and it's got to be involved in social transformation, jobs and housing. It's got to be sustained. It can't be short-termism, which is so, I mean, you know, 5 years facilities is great, but what happens then? You know, you're going to have some sort of committee or something that will foresee it into the future. Is it going to be a structure that will only last 5 years? I think getting the faith groups is very important. I think the St Mungo's man mentioned that, the multi-faith forum, because you know, there are mosques at the back of Harleston High Street that are really tiny and cramped. You know, is there going to be a nice hall they could use? They use Bridge Park at the moment. The churches are fairly established, but I think there are some smaller gospel, you know, other types of groups that may be in need of facilities, mothers and children, all sorts. We've got a specialist Ethiopian church. I mean, we've got a very, very wonderful community here. I think the trouble you have sometimes, I have worked in a community centre as a caretaker, and you can have a slightly inward looking way after a while. You know, that certain users will be attracted and others won't. And if this includes an element of, let's go again to the rough sleepers, you know, how are they welcomed? How are they, you know, given more digital skills? There's a lot of thinking through. But I suppose now the one I'm most concerned about now with what happens after the 5 years.
Yeah, so I think that that's a question that we don't have an answer to yet, but the desire from the client team and from Three Space, who will initially operate it, is that what success looks like is handing that facility over to a group that has the capacity to run it in the long term. The sooner that handover can happen, the better we enable a group to come forward to do so, then that would be a good thing. And we certainly expect it to be in life for far longer than 5 years.
That's
Helen,
good.
Are there other groups you think, in terms of like, you talked about rough sleepers, you talked about faith groups, are there other groups or members of the community that you think will be hardest to reach, that we need to make extra efforts that we're doing so? Exactly. I think also about building social value.
Yes, I mean, in the last 5 years, I've met and worked with more Somali people, but To start with, I think they were quite an inward-looking community, as the Bangladeshis historically were in the east of London. I mean, outreach is so vexed, isn't it? It's about welcoming people, making the space rather neutral in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you must have had meetings at the cooperative. I mean, I personally dislike that building. I find it sort of a bit trendy and new age, but it doesn't stop me from going to meetings there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to hear from Kate. She must have some thoughts there. I can see she's very busy there, but I don't know what she's saying.
I'm just writing up the notes for the just taking some notes from what you're saying.
Kate, what are your views on kind of? I mean, you're relatively new to Brent, or new to your role?
No, been 2 years I've been doing it, so yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy to hear from you.
Yeah, I echo what Helen's been saying about Harleston and needing community space, definitely. And there's a lot of regen going to be happening in Harleston. It's great. I guess I think that the challenge here is there's such a wide variety of users. There's obviously the boat people, the water sports people, as you said, businesses, the local community, visitors, and again, what Helen's saying about the different types of groups that could use. So I think the inclusivity is really, really important, even in just the sense of the different types of users, to try and cater for quite a wide variety. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking of the inclusivity, particularly. I've talked about wheelchair access, but also, you know, simple things like notices or communicating about it to be translated in different languages, so nobody feels excluded. And I think the idea, Helen, as you said, a neutral space is really important, so it doesn't feel anything and anybody, you know, can come. Yeah, so I think it'd be fantastic, actually, and obviously it's really important for the community to be involved in this as we started this process. But I guess maybe try and reach out to some of the protected characteristics type of groups, and ask them, how can we make it accessible for you?
I think that's a great idea. Yeah. And I mean, also children bring us together quite often. You know, if there are toys and safe places to play or eat, you know, people will mix more readily, I think, as families sometimes.
Yeah.
That's interesting, Helen. I quite like that. Like, in some ways, if you're making a good neutral space, all kids like to play. Everyone eats. Like, there's some universal things that could be very get some traction, right?
Yeah.
But I hear you both on the kind of making a good neutral space, because I think that's, if you make it, like, how do you make sure you're welcoming to a wide spectrum of people?
Brent has a very good community directory on its website. I mean, you know, you could go through for sexuality, religion, race, gender, all the rest of it. It's out of date, but
Oliver, sorry, Helen, we can put you in touch with our equalities officer in Brent. I work in the same team, and she'd be very happy to have a conversation about this. There's some standard sort of equality impact assessments that can be done.
Yeah, and we've been looking at that actually with Partners 3 Space, with PRD who are on the team, and also looking at how you might generate social value, equality, diversity, and inclusion being those factors.
Brilliant. Yeah.
I've got a message on my screen here.
Yeah, go
just
check
saying
us out.
that we need to return to the group and feedback these points. So
who's going to feed back? Actually,
come on, Kate. You're the one who's been making the notes.
Kate, I'd be happy to, but do both of you feel free to jump in if I misrepresent or miss something. I think we'll only have a couple of minutes to kind of just make a few key points. Things are being noted, but yeah, we'll pick up on that in more.
Nice to meet you both. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thanks,
Helen. We're going to
Helen.
rejoin the main room. Thank you.
Okay.
I could have told you that. There's something wrong with my screen. What's on my screen?
Well, can I just say I eavesdropped.
What I'm going to do also, I'm going to put in a few questions in the chat that we can all discuss. Are you able to see the chat with the questions that have been uploaded?
Yeah, it hasn't come up yet for me.
No, me neither. I don't mind reading out some of the questions and we can do it like that if that would be easier, guys. My name's Roz. I'm head of communications and engagement at OPDC. Welcome to everybody and thanks for coming to the event. We really appreciate it. We've got some questions to kind of following on from Ryan's brilliant presentation, which kind of set some of the scene around this topic of discussion. We've got a few questions that we thought could kind of spark debate and spark discussion and spark ideas. So, I mean, I definitely want it to be kind of led by you guys. So if, you know, without further ado, the first question that I thought we could start chatting about is how can we support existing community activities at the new hub? So the plans for Harleston, I don't know how much you guys know exactly, but really we want it to be driven by the local community. So how do you think the plans for a community hub at the Canal could support existing community activities that go on?
I mean, if we're taking the questions one at a time, I'm a member of Harleston Neighbourhood Forum. Not sure if others here are too. I think we've been looking for a suitable secular, non-licensed venue for meetings for ages. So I think we would. It would be a little bit sort of off centre of the forum area, but I think we'd be very keen. I'm sure to make use of it if we could do.
Yeah, and in terms of the meeting room, would that be do you think, to kind of host community events? What would this space look like, or is it more to sort of sit and discuss like a traditional sort of conference room?
Well, I suppose a kind of fairly flexible, not non-fancy kind of space would do. So something that will be capable of holding a forum meeting, so an open public meeting that's open to members, or hosting an event.
Great. I know from experience of kind of trying to organise community events in the local area, there's often, you know, we're not exactly spoilt for choice for community meeting rooms, are we? So yeah. I agree with that. Any other thoughts from the room?
Yeah, my interest is in mental health, actually. So I joined the meeting because I wanted to see what kind of opportunities there would be for people that have mental health issues. I mean, it seems like a lot of it is around boating and the canal community, canal side community. But when I was looking at one of the slides you had, where you were talking about the mending and making, and the workshop facilities, and makerspace, those things really kind of caught my attention, because I would like to be able to see something that's really practical for people that have mental health issues. Practical, like, using their hands. A lot of clients, people, they like to use their hands. They want to build. They want to maybe do painting and decorating. They want to do carpentry, things like that. So somewhere where we could have a bit of a practical space. The other area that I found really interesting was, the food and growing. I think that's something that's really good, because mental health people can really get involved in that side of things, and the community side of, even cleaning up the area, doing, things like that. That's really something that people could get involved with. Yeah. And then obviously the multimedia, the recording studio. God, my clients have dreams of being in a studio. They love, it's like, oh my God, a studio, music, making music, it's a big deal. So having opportunity to be able to be part of something like that, even if it's, I don't know, if it's something that's an hour a week, even for someone, it can make a big difference to someone's life. But yeah, I thought it was all, I think it's really, really cool, but it's trying to figure out how do we connect our people to, to these facilities.
Yeah. Sorry, Amanda, what organisation did you say that you were from?
Okay, so what I do is I run private mental health care homes. So it's residential, and it's also supported accommodation. Mm-hmm. I've been in the business for near 20 years. And with all that experience and working with my clients, I kind of have just a good idea of what is needed. And because resources have been, like I think Mr. Doyle or Coyle said, it's been eviscerated. There's nothing out there for people. And then that leads to all sorts of issues in the community. So we need to have things that are focused, but in areas that they really would be interested in. Yeah. That's really important.
Thanks so much, Amanda. Does anybody else have any thoughts? Yeah, Robin?
Oh, no, is it Isabel?
Oh, sorry, Isabel.
Go ahead, I'll go after you, it's fine.
Okay, yeah, so, I was stimulated by Paul and Amanda as to any facilities. They ought to be flexible, but also affordable. And there is also the issue of genuine community access, because sometimes community hubs can be taken over, in a sense, unless the governance arrangements are well ordered, by a clique, which then excludes certain parts of the community. I've encountered that before. And about edible plants, are we going to have this all along the canal, not just simply community orchards and so forth, not simply at the Old Oak Lane Bridge?
Yeah, so okay.
But recording studios are a great idea, because I think they wouldn't annoy people. The noise or music. Music generated wouldn't annoy.
Thanks. Cheers, Robin. I'm sorry, by the way, I'm avidly making notes. I don't have my head down because I'm ignoring you. Isabel.
Hi. Well, I'm a boater. I live at Crab, just down the canal. So, I mean, there seems to be lots of interest in creating a boaters workshop, which is great. And, there are a couple of examples that exist. One of the things I'm a bit worried about is how all of these things are going to operate together. because a boater's workshop will involve sanding, building, electricity, dirty, noisy things, and it's not a huge section of the canal there. So I think it's really fantastic to kind of try and think these things together. And in terms of having spaces for people to make and create that is totally in line with what boaters would want to do. One of the main problems that we have is not having enough space, not having electricity, not having a delivery address. So even just having somewhere to have things delivered is helpful. Facilities for rubbish and recycling and things like that. And also community spaces for people to meet, because boaters increasingly are kind of, putting on workshops in terms of education in safety for, women boaters, or for, increasing the security on the boat, or for new boaters, things that they need to know, composting, toilets, there are all of these skills that people kind of need to know, and we're starting to do online workshops and in-person workshops, so spaces to do things like that would also be really helpful. What else was I going to say? Yeah, and just the other thing to think about is how you manage that mooring space. Is it a place that people can come to for a couple of weeks at a time, and then they move on? Do they book a longer spot? How do you manage the kinds of work that they can do in that space? Or is it just somewhere that they dip into, they cycle along and dip into the workshop, and they've got the tools and things to use there? Yeah, I think it's just a matter of kind of managing all of these different uses.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that's something that is going to be a kind of a key thing for us to think through, the practical side of things, the operational side. And while you were speaking, Isabel, I was jotting down a number of the questions that you raised. And I think it would be good if I'll feed that back to the project team, and they could maybe get back to you on some of those, because I'm probably not the best person to answer them all, but I think we can. And I think it's right that you're kind of sparking some of these questions, because we need to think through them before we decide what goes there. If everybody doesn't mind, I'm going to move on to the next question, because I'm just conscious of time. But actually, to be honest, the next question you started the discussion, Isabel, which is how can new community activities be facilitated? And I think that's kind of coming on to the more practical side of things. And I think, Robin, you touched on this as well, about, well, what's the governance around it? Who's going to manage it? And how are we going to make sure that it's accessible for everybody and welcoming to everybody? And as you mentioned, Robin, that it doesn't kind of just get monopolized by one group. So, I mean, I don't know whether, partly is, but this is for us to answer to you, and it's something that we're going to be putting a lot of thought into. But if we're talking about in an ideal world, do you have any ideas for what you would like to see, or how you would like to see something like this run or managed?
No.
I think
all you can do is not simply look for good practice in terms of buildings and architecture, but also models of community management.
Exactly.
I'm throwing it back to you to do that searching, and once you find out, do tell us all.
Yeah, and I think, it's an age-old question, isn't it? Because obviously we want it to be something that's run by community members for community members, but at the same time not giving you guys such a burden of the management side of things, and making sure that it's run properly. And I think it's striking that balance. I wonder if we could just move on to the next question, because I just want to make sure we get through everything. Anita, how are we doing for time? Are we pushing?
We've got 4 minutes left. Nisha's going to let us know when you're down to 2 minutes.
Fine, no problem. So how can local businesses be supported and create opportunities in the community? So I don't know if we don't have anybody from a business here who could sort of speak up on behalf of them, or maybe Amanda, you represent a business in the area.
Yeah, I do represent a business in the
Not really a business, yeah.
Okay, sugar.
What could we do to support smaller independent businesses, basically, so that they can operate in the space?
Okay, so I suppose this kind of ties in with like the last question as well, because I was thinking of Ryan and the fact that he works with St. Mungo's, and there's kind of a parity between what I want to bring to something like this and what he does as well. There's a very good parity. So it might be that, and then someone else said something about, well, how does it actually all work together? Because you're trying to bring very different, parts of the community into an area. So how does that work? So it could be that there's a space that is for, people who need specific things. It could be that it might not be that we can work within the workshops that are there, because I don't know if that would really work anyway, but it could be that there's a space, there's a part of it that's designated for people to be able to access and use that part of the the space, rather than it just being all allocated to one type of thing. It can be, it's kind of split. I don't know.
I mean, to me, it seems to me as though there's inevitably going to be a mix of business types and sectors there. I mean, my instinct is there's quite a bit of overlap between some of the things that have been talked about today. So meeting space, workshop, and so on. They can serve multiple communities. I think if we're talking specifically about getting businesses in, then first of all, make it as easy as possible for businesses to move there. Think about who the customers are, how the customers are going to get there, who the customers can be in future. So I think it's about offering flexible spaces at least initially peppercorn rent, and don't be afraid to take, no pun intended, a bit of a punt.
Yeah. So how can we make sure a new community hub feels inclusive and accessible for all? And then, because it's the 2-minute warning, I'm going to merge the two questions. How can this add social value that benefits the wider community? And I think, to be honest, that last question is really the clincher. Like, how can this project add value and benefit the community the most?
So I think this kind of covers a couple of the different questions that you've had. And in terms of kind of managing the space, I think some kind of, like, it can't just be completely voluntary run. There has to be skilled people, facilitators, managers that are working across these different things. But if they can be working on community projects and upskilling people at the same time, that they can then kind of pass on other knowledge, or the more people that get involved, the more people know how to look after that space, and it becomes kind of more of a community managed place. But it can't just be volunteer run. There has to be funding and facilitators involved, but part of that can then also include the training and the workshops that people are talking about. That's just an idea that I've got. But yeah, I think mainly it just, a volunteer community run space needs support, otherwise it will just fizzle.
Yeah,
people don't have time and money to do it off their own backs completely. It really has to be there.
I agree. And last 30 seconds, does anybody, I'm sorry to push such an important conversation, does anybody have any final thoughts?
I've got two really quick ones.
Sure.
So I think literally improve the accessibility, which at the moment isn't great. I mean, I'm sure you're thinking about that already, but to state the obvious. So safe and accessible, and deliver social value by making it sustainable.